It was early morning in a small Oregon town. The streets were quiet, covered with soft fog. Inside Maple Diner, the smell of coffee and fresh pancakes filled the air. Behind the counter worked Emma Carter, a 26-year-old woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Everyone in town knew her. She was the girl who always smiled, even when life wasn't easy. Emma lived alone in a small apartment above the diner. Her parents had passed away years ago, and she had no one else. Still, she never complained. She believed that kindness always came back in some way, even if the world didn't see it. That morning, while she wiped down the counter, she noticed something unusual outside the diner window. Across the street, sitting on the cold sidewalk, was a man. He looked around 40, with messy hair and a face that told a story of long, hard days. His clothes were dirty, his hands shaking from the cold. Beside him was a cardboard sign that said, "Just need a chance." People walked past him. Some looked away. Some crossed to the other side of the street. But Emma couldn't stop looking. There was something in his eyes, not anger, not madness, just deep sadness, and maybe a little hope. When her shift ended, she grabbed a cup of hot coffee and a sandwich from the kitchen. She walked outside slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. The man looked up, surprised when she stopped in front of him. "Hey," Emma said softly. "It's cold. You should have something warm." He blinked, unsure what to say. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough and tired. Emma smiled. "Yeah. Everyone deserves a warm meal." He accepted the food with shaky hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're the first person who stopped today." "What's your name?" Emma asked. "Daniel," he said after a pause. "Daniel Brooks." She nodded. "Nice to meet you, Daniel. I'm Emma. You can sit inside the diner if you want. It's warm there." He hesitated. "I don't think your boss would want me in there." Emma looked at him kindly. "Don't worry about that. I'll handle it." And she did. She convinced Mrs. Collins, the diner's owner, to let Daniel sit inside for a while. Emma poured him more coffee and gave him another sandwich. Daniel kept saying thank you, but Emma waved it off. "It's nothing," she said. But inside, she felt something change, like she had done something that truly mattered. As Daniel ate, Emma noticed small details. His voice was calm, his words careful. He didn't seem like a man who had always lived on the streets. There was something about him, his posture, the way he spoke, that didn't fit the picture. "Do you live around here?" Emma asked gently. He smiled sadly. "Not anymore. Used to." He looked down at the coffee. "Life took a few wrong turns, I guess." Emma didn't push him. She just listened. They talked for almost an hour about small things like weather, coffee, and music. For a moment, Daniel seemed to forget where he was. When he left, he thanked her again, promising he'd come back to return the favor one day. After he walked out, Mrs. Collins looked at Emma. "You're too kind, sweetheart," she said. "Not everyone deserves it." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes people just need someone to believe in them." That night, as Emma closed the diner, she looked outside again. The street was empty now. Only the faint sound of cars passing in the distance. She wondered where Daniel went, if he had a place to sleep, if he was okay. Before locking up, she noticed something on the table where Daniel had sat, a small folded piece of paper. She opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you, Emma. You reminded me that good people still exist." She felt tears fill her eyes. She pressed the note to her heart and whispered, "You're welcome, Daniel." The next morning, Emma came to work early. The street was quiet again, but Daniel wasn't there. Days passed. Each morning, she looked out the window, hoping to see him again. But he never came. Still, she kept the note safe in her wallet, like a small piece of light she could hold onto. Weeks later, on another cold morning, Emma was serving customers when she heard someone clear their throat near the door. She turned and froze. Daniel stood there. But something was different this time. His face was cleaner, his clothes were better, and his eyes were brighter. He smiled at her, and for a moment, the whole diner went silent. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea that this moment, this simple act of kindness, was about to change both of their lives forever. When Daniel walked into the diner again, Emma almost dropped the coffee pot in her hand. The man standing at the door looked different. His face was freshly shaved, his hair neatly combed, and his old torn jacket was replaced with a clean brown coat. Still, it was the same Daniel, the same tired eyes, but this time, there was a spark of something new in them. "Morning," he said softly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Emma smiled wide. "Not at all. You came back." "I told you I would," Daniel replied, sitting down at the same corner table as before. Emma quickly poured him a cup of coffee. "You look better," she said. "Things going okay?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Better than before. I found some work helping a mechanic a few blocks away. Not much, but it's something." "That's great," Emma said, genuinely happy. They talked for a while, just like old friends. Daniel told her how he had been trying to rebuild his life step by step. Emma listened closely, glad to see his hope returning. But deep inside, she still wondered, how did a man like Daniel end up on the streets in the first place? His words, his calm way of speaking, he didn't sound like someone who had always struggled. One evening, after her shift ended, Emma found Daniel still sitting at the diner. The place was almost empty, the soft music playing in the background. He seemed lost in thought, staring at the window where rain was falling slowly. "Penny for your thoughts?" Emma asked as she sat across from him. Daniel smiled faintly. "You ever wish you could start life over?" "Maybe once or twice," Emma said with a shrug. "But I think every day can be a new start if we want it." Daniel looked down at his coffee. "You really believe that?" "I do," Emma said. "Why? Don't you?" He didn't answer right away. After a long silence, he said quietly, "I used to have a good life, Emma. A job, a home, a family. I built something big, something that meant everything to me. Then I lost it all in just 1 year." Emma leaned closer. "What happened?" Daniel sighed. "It's a long story. But let's just say I trusted the wrong people. After my accident, I couldn't work for months. My business partner took control and ruined everything. When I recovered, I had nothing left. No company. No home. No one who cared." Emma's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Daniel." He gave a small, tired smile. "It's not your fault. I just stopped believing that kindness existed, until you came along." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Daniel's story. Something didn't add up: the way he spoke about his company, his calm confidence, and his knowledge about technology. He didn't sound like an ordinary worker. A few days later, Daniel came to the diner early and helped clean tables. The other staff didn't mind him anymore, they liked him. Mrs. Collins even started letting him handle deliveries. Life was slowly improving for both of them. But one afternoon, when Emma was closing up, she accidentally knocked Daniel's small backpack off the chair. His things spilled on the floor: a few papers, an old wallet, and a folded photo. When she picked up the photo, her eyes widened. It showed Daniel standing beside a tall glass building with a glowing sign that read Brooks Technologies. He was wearing a suit, shaking hands with a man in a formal ceremony. There was a banner behind them: New Product Launch, Chief Engineer Daniel Brooks. Emma froze. Her heartbeat quickened. She looked at the photo again. The man beside Daniel was a famous name she had seen on the news years ago: William Harker, the CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in Oregon. She didn't know what to think. Daniel Brooks, the man sitting in her diner, once homeless, had once been a high-level engineer, maybe even a company founder. But why hadn't he told her? Why was he hiding that part of his life? When Daniel returned from the storeroom, she quickly put the photo back into his bag. Her heart was racing, but she acted normal. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Emma said with a small smile. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. That night, Emma couldn't stop thinking. Who exactly was Daniel Brooks? What had really happened to his company? And most of all, was he in trouble? The next morning, Emma came to work early again. She wanted to talk to Daniel, to ask about the photo, but he never showed up. Hours passed. She checked the alley behind the diner, the park nearby, even the small shelter where he sometimes stayed, but there was no sign of him. By evening, Emma stood outside the diner, staring at the empty street, the same place where she first saw him. The cold wind brushed against her face, and she whispered, "Where did you go, Daniel?" Little did she know Daniel had left for a reason. A reason connected to that photograph, and to a secret that could change both their lives forever. The next few days felt strangely quiet for Emma. Daniel didn't come back to the diner, and his sudden disappearance filled her heart with worry. Every time the doorbell rang, she hoped it was him, walking in with that small smile of his. But it never was. One night, as Emma cleaned tables after closing, she found herself staring at the window again, the same spot where she had first seen Daniel sitting weeks ago. The fog outside was thick, and street lights painted soft yellow circles on the pavement. It felt empty without him. "Maybe he just moved on," Mrs. Collins said kindly when she noticed Emma looking sad. "You helped him, dear. That's what matters." Emma smiled faintly. "I just wish I knew he was okay." But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel's story wasn't finished. Then, one rainy evening, while Emma was locking up, she saw an envelope taped to the door. Her name was written on it in neat handwriting: Emma Carter. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside was a short letter. "Emma. I didn't disappear because I wanted to. I needed to face something from my past before I could move forward. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Because of you, I found the strength to try again. Thank you for seeing me as more than my mistakes. Daniel Brooks." Folded with the letter was a business card that read, "Brooks Innovations, CEO, Daniel Brooks." Emma gasped. Her hands trembled as she stared at the card. It couldn't be real. The man she'd found sitting on the sidewalk weeks ago, cold, broken, and lost, was now the CEO of a company again? For a long time, she just stood there, the letter in one hand and the card in the other. Then she smiled, tears filling her eyes. "He did it," she whispered. "He really did it?" The next morning, she showed the letter to Mrs. Collins. "I knew there was something special about that man," Mrs. Collins said, shaking her head in disbelief. "You helped him find his way again, Emma." Days turned into weeks. Life went on, but Emma often found herself thinking about Daniel. His words replayed in her mind: "You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Then, one morning, the diner phone rang. "Maple Diner, this is Emma," she answered cheerfully. A man's voice replied, "Is this Miss Emma Carter?" "Yes, who's calling?" "This is John Miller. I work with Mr. Daniel Brooks at Brooks Innovations. Mr. Brooks asked me to deliver something to you personally." Within an hour, a black car stopped outside the diner. A man in a suit stepped out and handed her a large sealed envelope. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter read, "Dear Emma. You once gave me a cup of coffee and a reason to live again. That moment changed everything for me. I want to return that kindness in the only way I know how. I've just started a new project, a foundation that helps people rebuild their lives after homelessness or loss. I would be honored if you joined me as a partner. You have the heart this world needs. Yours truly, Daniel Brooks." Emma sat down, her hands shaking. The check was enough to change her life completely. But more than that, Daniel's offer meant something deeper: trust, respect, and gratitude. Mrs. Collins, reading over her shoulder, gasped. "Emma, this is incredible. You have to go." "I don't know," Emma said softly. "What if I'm not ready for something like this?" Mrs. Collins placed a hand on her shoulder. "You helped a man rise from nothing. I think you're ready for anything." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She thought about the moment she first saw Daniel, cold and alone. She thought about his quiet voice, his stories, his sadness. She remembered how just one act of kindness had started all of this. The next morning, she packed her small suitcase and stood in front of the diner one last time. The rising sun painted the town golden. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Thank you for everything." As she turned to leave, another envelope fell from her bag, one she hadn't noticed before. It was from Daniel again. Inside, just one line. "Kindness started the story. Let's see how far it can go." Emma smiled through her tears. By the afternoon, she arrived at the glass building she'd seen in Daniel's photo, Brooks Innovations. The tall doors opened automatically, and she stepped inside. The lobby was bright and modern, filled with people in suits walking quickly through the halls. At the far end stood Daniel, waiting. He looked confident, healthy, and happy. When he saw her, he smiled the same warm smile she remembered from the diner. "Welcome, Emma," he said. "I told you I'd come back to return the favor." And for the first time, Emma felt something powerful, the feeling that her kindness had started something much bigger than she ever imagined. The morning sun shone through the big glass windows of Brooks Innovations. The lobby was full of people moving quickly, carrying folders and laptops. Everything looked sharp and professional, a world far away from the small diner in Oregon. Emma stood at the entrance, holding her purse tightly. It had been weeks since she received Daniel's letter and invitation. Even now, she wasn't sure she was ready to step into his world. But something inside told her to take that chance, just as she once gave him one. "Miss Carter," a young assistant greeted her with a smile. "Mr. Brooks is expecting you." Emma nodded nervously and followed the assistant through bright hallways. The walls were lined with photos of smiling people, success stories of the foundation Daniel had started. Each picture showed a person who once had nothing but was now standing proud, rebuilding their life. When the office door opened, Emma froze. Daniel stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. He turned, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Emma," he said warmly, walking toward her. "You came." Emma smiled shyly. "I almost didn't. This place is huge." Daniel laughed softly. "It's still just a workplace. The real magic isn't here, it's what we're trying to build outside." He handed her a cup of coffee. "Still like it with 2 sugars?" She laughed. "You remembered." They sat together at a round table. For a moment, neither spoke, just quiet smiles between two people who shared something deeper than words. "I wanted to thank you in person," Daniel finally said. "What you did for me changed my life. You didn't just give me food, Emma. You gave me back my faith." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "I didn't do much, Daniel. You were the one who found your way again." He shook his head. "I was broken. You reminded me I wasn't invisible." Daniel walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. "I started something new, the New Chance program. We help people who've lost everything. We give them shelter, jobs, and most of all hope." He placed the folder in front of her. Inside were photos of people smiling, working, learning. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she turned the pages. "You're doing this?" she asked. "We're doing this," Daniel said. "If you'll join me." Emma looked surprised. "Me?" "Yes," he said with a smile. "I want you to be part of it. You understand people. You see what others don't. That's rare, Emma." She hesitated. "But I don't have your experience. I've never worked in an office or run anything." Daniel leaned forward. "When I was sitting outside that diner, I had no plan, no confidence. You didn't ask for my resume, you just cared. That's the kind of person I want leading this with me." Emma was quiet for a long time. She looked at the photos again, all those faces filled with second chances. Her heart warmed. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll do it." Daniel smiled wide. "You just made the best decision of your life." Weeks passed, and Emma quickly became the heart of the new program. She talked to everyone, the people struggling to find work, the families who had lost their homes, the volunteers who gave their time. She treated them all with the same kindness she showed Daniel that first day. Soon, the local news heard about the New Chance program. Cameras came to film their work. When they interviewed Emma, she said, "Kindness isn't big or small. It's just real. And it can change someone's day or their life." Daniel watched the interview from his office, smiling proudly. One evening, after everyone left, he found Emma sitting alone at her desk, sorting papers. "You should go home," he said gently. "I just want everything to be perfect," she said. "People are counting on us." Daniel sat beside her. "You've already made it perfect. Look around, they believe again, because of you." Emma looked at him and smiled. "Because of us." A few days later, Daniel surprised her. He walked into the office with boxes full of brand new kitchen equipment and coffee machines. "What's all this?" Emma asked, confused. He grinned. "A gift for Maple Diner. I called Mrs. Collins." She said the place needed an upgrade. Thought we could return the favor. Emma laughed, covering her mouth. You remembered the diner. I could never forget, Daniel said. That's where everything began. The next day, they drove back to the small town together. When Mrs. Collins saw them, she gasped and hugged them both tight. My goodness, you two. Look at you now. Daniel helped set up the new equipment while Emma brewed fresh coffee. The diner was full again, laughter, warmth, and life everywhere. When they finished, Daniel turned to Emma. You gave me a second chance. Now we're giving others the same. Emma smiled, tears in her eyes. And it all started right here with one cup of coffee. As the evening light spilled through the diner windows, it felt like time had stopped. Two people who once met by accident now stood together, changing lives one small act at a time. Outside, a new sign hung above the diner's door, Home of Kindness, partnered with the New Chance Foundation. The world had come full circle. A full year passed after Emma joined Brooks Innovations. The company had changed. It was no longer just a place for technology. Under Daniel's leadership and Emma's guidance, it became a home for hope. Together, they launched the New Chance Foundation, a program helping homeless people learn new skills, find jobs, and rebuild their lives. The program started small, only 10 people in the first month. But soon, news spread. Reporters came. Local TV stations showed stories of people who had nothing and found everything again thanks to Daniel and Emma. Emma still worked the same way she always did, with a warm smile, gentle voice, and open heart. She never let the fame change her. Every morning, she made coffee for the staff. Every week, she visited the shelters herself. People began to call her the girl who never stopped believing in kindness. Daniel often watched her from his office window, amazed. He had rebuilt his career, his company, and his life, but deep down, he knew none of it would have happened without her. One evening, after a long day at work, Daniel invited Emma to the rooftop garden of the company building. The city lights shimmered below like stars fallen to earth. It's beautiful, Emma whispered, looking at the glowing skyline. Yes, Daniel said. But not as beautiful as what you helped create. Emma turned to him, smiling. We both created it? You believed again. Daniel nodded. You know, before I met you, I didn't think I had a future. I was ready to give up on everything. But you stopped for a stranger. You didn't see a failure. You saw a person. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You would have helped someone too if you were in my place. Daniel shook his head softly. Maybe. But you did it when no one else would. That takes courage. For a while, they stood in silence, watching the city lights flicker in the cool night air. Then Daniel said, We're opening a new center next week in Seattle. I want you to run it. It's time the world sees the power of your kindness. Emma laughed gently. Me? Running a center? Daniel smiled. Who else? You're the heart of this whole idea. She looked out over the city again, her heart full. I'll do it, she said quietly. The following week, the grand opening of the Seattle Center drew hundreds of people. Cameras flashed, journalists took notes, and reporters asked questions. Daniel stood on the stage first and shared his story, how he lost everything and how one simple act of kindness brought him back to life. Then he called Emma forward. The audience clapped loudly as she walked up, shy but smiling. Emma took the microphone and looked at the crowd. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just smiled and took a deep breath. I'm not a hero, she began softly. I'm just someone who believes in doing small good things. I met a man on a cold morning who needed help. I didn't know that cup of coffee would change two lives. Kindness is powerful. It doesn't need money or fame, just a heart that cares. The crowd grew silent, listening carefully. Some people even wiped away tears. Emma continued, if you see someone struggling, don't look away. One small act can create a ripple, a chain of good that goes farther than you can ever imagine. When she finished, the room filled with applause. Daniel smiled proudly from the side of the stage. Months later, the program grew across the country. New centers opened in Chicago, Denver, and New York. Each one carried a small framed photo at the entrance, a picture of Emma handing a cup of coffee to Daniel that very first morning outside the diner. Under the photo were the words, "One act of kindness can change the world." Emma still visited the old Maple Diner whenever she could. Mrs. Collins always welcomed her with a warm hug and free pie. "I told you your kindness would take you far," she'd say proudly. One snowy evening, Emma sat by the diner window, sipping coffee as the world outside turned white. She thought of the day she first met Daniel, cold, lost, and invisible to everyone but her. Now, hundreds of people had homes, jobs, and hope, all because of that one moment. She smiled to herself and whispered, "It really doesn't take much to change a life." The bell above the diner door rang, and Daniel walked in with his usual calm smile. "I knew I'd find you here," he said. Emma laughed. "Old habits never change." He sat across from her. "Good. Some shouldn't." Outside, snow continued to fall gently. Inside, the light from the diner glowed warm and soft, just like the first morning they met. And as the screen faded to black, Emma's voice echoed softly. "Choose kindness, you never know whose life it might change, or how it might change yours." Glowing star, the end. Glowing star.